The plan for the escape strategy was 100% Pechersky. Those who'd already been in the camp immediately felt some kind of trust towards him and started consulting with him about what they needed to do to get out of the camp.
And finally, because of him, because of his knowledge, the organization took off. And we decided to escape October 13, 1943.
He was a smart guy, an officer in the Soviet Army. He looked around and started studying how everything in the camp was set up. The mathematical calculations of freedom. Poland, Lublinsky province, 20 or 30 kilometers from the Belarusian border. Here, in March 1942, close to the railroad station, was the death camp Sobibor established. We arrived at Sobibor on September 22nd. Some of the railway cars were taken into the camp, emptied, and then taken to the second camp. It was already later that I learned that there was a second camp. Frenzel came and offered the people with carpentry skills the chance to leave. There's an unwritten rule among prisoners of war. When they're called, they go first, because no one knows what will happen to the next guy in line.
Me, 15 years old, what could I be? 15 years I go to school. But inside, I begged. And that time I still believed in God. And begged to God, God help me, please let me stay alive. Pray to this German, please take me. And I still believe, I strongly believe.
To say it, we knew we come to a camp. We didn't know what to expect. And I say from lodge. I happened to be with another, about 20 people who were picked out. I didn't know if this was working or whatever. And I was picked out and I happened to be for work. But my brother and my friend was also in the same transport.
We started asking around, what is this place? Where is this camp? Where are our friends who'd been taken away somewhere? We'd traveled together, they'd become our friends. Where had they been taken, and where could we meet them? There was a stench hanging in the air. The wind had blown it our way. You can imagine, you couldn't breathe.
In the rise, there are two clouds. And the whistle of the birds, because Sobibor was in a forest, you know, beautiful. But farther on, about 200 yards, there was another.
And there, from the other side, came thick smoke. He says, you want to know where your buddies are? Take a look. Those are your friends, the ones who arrived with you today. On the first evening, a man approached me. We started talking, and he explained to me the purpose of the camp.
Transport usually arrived in the morning, sometime in the nighttime. They arrived about 2,000 people, about 10 wagons were pushed inside the camp.
Значит, это было построено так. 300 человек раздеваются, остальные ждут.
In the beginning, it was set up like this. 300 people undress, everybody else waits. Once they were undressed, from Camp 2 came running 100 people. Most of them were Dutch Jews. Each was carrying a blanket. They'd taken 3 sets of clothes and carried them to the storage room.
Why they are taking this away? But it didn't take long. They left by the exit gate and they were led to a yard. Over there, a Nazi in a white uniform had a speech to them. He kindly apologized for the long trip from Holland. But unfortunately, before they get their apartments, because of sanitary conditions, they must have a shower. So it will take a little bit longer till they will relax. Now, he said, if they want, here on the table are postcards. They could pick up postcards and send to their family that they arrived in a beautiful place. Sobibor was a nice place.
10 feet away from the gas chamber. Now they picked me at times, although to pick, just cutting the hair. So that was really a terrible thing. Everything was terrible, but that was especially terrible because there's naked women with children, and they know, to go to the dead, and you have to cut, and you cannot say a word. You cannot say a word because they have the Germans on the ground. If you open your mouth, that's something that just take you with them.
Then they took them on this pathway to heaven. On one side, the barbed wire fence, and on the other side, a route for the local collaborator policemen. And when they took them out on this path, they began to whip them, striking their buttocks. Each ran faster to avoid the blows from the whip, to reach the so-called banya more quickly. This went on for 10 or 15 minutes. Then the floor automatically opened up, the bodies fell into the wagons, and they were transported to the fire. There'd been special railway tracks laid for this purpose. Those who carried out this work were the strongest and most fit, but they didn't last long, maybe 10 days, 2 weeks. Then they were killed, and new workers were found to replace them.
At least 16, 18 hours. At least 16, 18 hours. and sometimes more. If they had another transport come, so they...
If you saw an SS soldier who was standing and sorting, then you get 25 lashes. You lay down and they beat you. And count. Pull down your pants, then they give you those 25 lashes. After that, you can't sit for 2 weeks.
Keep us occupied. That now I realize that why they did it to us, to exercise, not to let us think, you know. And then later on, during the winter.
So you couldn't take anything, and although you couldn't help it, you couldn't do anything. You could either you go with them or you be quiet.
Дрова, то есть пни раскалывали. Наверное, эти пни шли на то, чтобы в третьем лагере клали на шпалы сверху людей, чтобы...
We chopped wood, broke apart the stumps and the logs. Probably these logs were used in the third camp to start the fire. Then on them the dead bodies, then they'd light the fire.
В очках. Он, наверное, был слеповат-основательно.
In front of me stood a Dutchman. He was a young guy, wore glasses. There's no way he could break apart those logs. He could barely pick up the axe. Frenzel noticed this. He approached the Dutchman and stopped behind him. The Dutchman lifts his axe, and Frenzel lashes him with the whip, beats him. In general, he used to like to whip people. He'd whistle some catchy tune while he did it. And mind you, he didn't miss a beat. That's how he beat the Dutchman. I was a new guy in the camp. It was my third or fourth day. I didn't know the camp rules, that if you were standing and not working, you'd get 25 lashes. And unintentionally, I somehow was fixated on their interaction. Frenzel noticed and called me over. You can imagine, my heart sank. I felt that I was going to face some kind of punishment. I approached him. He chose a big log, stood by it, pointed to his watch, and said, 5 minutes. If you chop it up, a pack of cigarettes are yours. If you don't, 25 lashes. And when he gave the go-ahead to start, I started chopping. And when I did chop it, he extended his hand with the cigarettes, and with a smile, pointed to his watch. 4.5 minutes. I said to him, "Thank you, I don't smoke." He, not saying a word, turned and walked away. I continued working. When I see him, Frenzel's walking, carrying a half a loaf of bread and a package of margarine.
И вот мне показалось, я знал.
I knew where he took that bread from. He was in camp number 2, where the belongings of the dead and the food which they had brought with them was left behind. And it seemed to me that blood was dripping from his fingers, because people were brought here as if to work, and then they killed them all. I felt frightened, terrible, when I saw those drops of blood. I said to him, "Thank you. What I get here is absolutely enough for me." His hands shook. He left. And already that evening, in the barracks, the women who worked sorting belongings said that Frenzel, when he brought the bread and the margarine back, threw it and said, "The Russian soldier is full." I understood perfectly well that we needed to organize the escape in the course of the coming week, before the snow fell, where we could hide in the forest. When it got dark, Leon Fengelder came to see me. Only later, I learned that he was the head of the underground committee. We sat in the yard on pieces of wood. First he warned me that I might be followed. "Why follow me?" I answered calmly. "I don't have any plans to do anything." Leon was quiet for a bit. Then he said, "It's hard to escape from here. Basically impossible. Each section is surrounded with barbed wire fencing 3 meters high. Beyond them, there are mined fields that stretch 15 meters. And after that, another row of barbed wire. The security force is approximately 130 men, including 14 German officers. And most important, even if someone manages to escape, it means death for all those who remain." "What are you talking about? I'm not thinking about any escape." And I said to him, "Is it even possible to escape from such a camp?" He says to me, "We understand perfectly well that you, Soviet guys, won't just sit here and do nothing. But you need to understand that if even one person from our camp runs away, all the rest will be sent to the gas chambers. Here we have complete solidarity, one for all and all for one." Is that really the way that it is when they talk about Soviet people, that comrades won't leave each other in danger? You wouldn't let it be like that for the sake of 10 or 15 people, all the rest in the camp being killed? An inscription on building number 121 on Socialist Street in Rostov-on-Don reads, "In this courtyard, by this well, in a communal shared apartment, Alexandre Pechersky lived for almost 40 years until his death. By the window on the second floor, in 1980, he gave an interview, which was filmed by the former Sobibor camp prisoner Julius Shelvis." A problem arose. How was I going to meet with people from the underground committee? Then I suggested, what if you introduce me to one of the girls who doesn't know Russian, so she won't understand what I was saying, and I'd meet her regularly. Then during our meetings, other people could come and sit with us, and we could talk, not being afraid that she understands what we're discussing. I wasn't afraid this girl would betray me. I worried that she might share what she heard with someone else. That would be the worst thing. Then it spreads further, and it could get as far as the leadership of the camp. On the first day, when I was in the barracks, I noticed one girl. She was probably 18 or 19. She had such eyes, you understand, this sad look in her eyes. But that was totally natural. No one could have bright, shining eyes in such a place. A heaviness weighed on everyone all the time. People were afraid. And I noticed that she smoked a lot. I asked to be introduced to her. They called her Luka. I was introduced to her, and then Shlema, Leon Feldgendler, and I went to the female barracks and started to talk to her.
Меня с ней познакомили. Ну, вполне естественно, пришли я, Шлейма и Леон Феллингер. Зашли в женский барак, начали разговаривать.
Leon said to her, "Luka, this Russian soldier wants to get to know you." And then I asked her, "Luka, how old are you?" She answered, 18. And I say, "Oh, you'd be better off as my daughter. I'm already 34. Then I asked her, "Luka, why do you smoke so much? You're so young. That's not good." And she says, how should I put it? Nerves. She told me that her father was a German communist underground member, that the Nazis had hunted for him. They arrested the entire family, she included. "Do you know, Sasha, where I work? in the yard, where the rabbit breeding is done. Through the cracks in the fence, I see everything. I see how naked, hunched-over people walk, men, women, children, how they push them, 300 at a time, there to the third camp, to the chambers. When they enter there, metal gates close behind them, then the diesel engine starts up and gas is released. And so that the screams of the dying aren't heard, at the same time they release hundreds of geese. Their gaggles drown out all the other sounds. That's why I smoke. Sasha, tell me, can it really be that our lives will end here?
For the people who just went to transport. And when I was doing that, I found the clothes of my brother and the pictures. The picture what I have is what I found on my brother's. He had the pictures with him.
My shoes were falling apart. There was a huge pile of shoes, and one of the guards threw me a pair of shoes, and they turned out to be my sister's shoes. When Gimmler came to the camp, he was told that the prisoners were brought from Warsaw, from somewhere in Poland, beautiful girls. He showed him the entire process, how the exterminations were carried out. We worked in the fourth camp, building barracks, and trainloads of people arrived. And when the people were rounded up and sent to the chambers, I heard a child scream, which means that the gas had been released. Mama. The word mama sounds the same in any language. Then I heard a woman scream. That, of course, was awful. I had a fear, not of losing my own life, but of my helplessness. Right now I'm making a model of the gas chamber. 250,000 Jews were brought from all over Europe. Here they all died, in this small gas chamber on the edge of the camp. In our camp, there were 17 Germans and 200 Nazi collaborators. The Germans didn't trust them, and they gave them firearm cartridges only to those who were in the watchtowers and the guardhouses. All the rest given empty rifles without bullets. That helped us a lot in the future when we found out about this.
Очень помогло в дальнейшем, когда мы узнали вот этот секрет. Много было отковано ножей.
There were a lot of forged knives and axes. Everything was in the carpenters' shops. Axes were given to everyone. Snipers were appointed, who were supposed to shoot at the guards in the towers to make their work difficult. He met Luca almost every day after work. And he probably told her about himself, about his parents, about Rostov, a beautiful city on the banks of the wide Don River, where he'd grown up in a big, happy family. It was the south of Russia, close to the Azov Sea. He dreamed of becoming a musician, but he damaged his hand. For himself and his friends, he still played and wrote music. He met his first wife in an amateur theater group. When his daughter was born, he wrote and dedicated a short play to her. But that peaceful and happy life came to an abrupt end. At the start of the war, he joined the army. Tough battles, retreats. They were surrounded by the enemy and captured near Vyazma in western Russia. His family received news of his death.
Через некоторое время ко мне приходит,
After some time, I received news that several people had tried to escape from the camp through the toilet, having cut through the barbed wire barriers. They told me the names of the people, and Weispapier was one of them. I called him to come talk to me. And right there, in front of Luka, we got into a heated argument. He says, "You're going to sit here courting a young lady while we'll wait for who knows what, doing nothing." It was a serious argument, and I said to him, "If anyone tries to escape, and I'll make sure that that place by the toilets is guarded, they will be destroyed immediately, because we can't allow two people to escape, and as a result, have the rest of us destroyed."
А чтобы уничтожили весь лагерь. Мы не имеем права это делать. Он ушел.
We will not do that.
Luka у меня спрашивает.
He left. Luka asked me, Sasha, what were you talking about with him? I said, "You know, Luka, it's our business. We had a fight, and that's it."
Спорили это, и все. Она говорит, неправда. Я знаю, о чем ты говорил. Так к моему отцу приходили люди.
She says, "It's not true.
Как будто бы
I know what you were talking about.
чай.
That's how people came to talk to my father, as if to drink tea together, to listen to records. But in fact, they were talking about their business. I, of course, changed the subject. But when she was ready to leave, I got scared. What if she would tell her mother or someone else? And that would be a threat to our efforts. So I said to her, "Luka, I ask you not to say a word to anyone about what you heard." She jumped up. All in tears, she yells, I was 8 years old. They beat me in the Gestapo offices. But I didn't give away father. Do you really think I can betray you? And she ran off.
Немцы очень любили слушать советские песни. Им было безразлично.
The Germans loved to listen to the Soviet songs. They didn't care which songs we sang. Of course, they loved Katyusha best of all. As we marched to the camp, we sang Soviet songs. Then, on the fourth or fifth day, I know because in 6 or 7 days, I didn't go to work anymore. The underground committee hid me in the carpentry shop so that I had less contact with the Germans, so that they wouldn't pay attention to me. So we lined up near the guards' barracks, started walking, just having left the first camp. And Frenzel says, "A song! A song!" Shabayev turns to me and asked, "What should we sing?"
Поворачивается ко мне Шубаев и спрашивает, что петь? А песни всегда запевал.
It was always Tsibulsky who started our singing, who was later killed in a partisan detachment. When we left the first camp, I noticed that the chief guard, Greshutz, had a bandaged arm. I asked, "Why is he bandaged?" And they explained that when he left for vacation, there was a bombing incident, and he was hit by our plane's bombs. And so we started singing the aviation march, flying higher and higher.
Да, была бомбежка. И он попал под бомбежку. Тогда, когда они сказали, что петь, я говорю, пейте, пойте. Выше и выше и выше.
Those prisoners who survived Sobibor sing the March of Soviet Aviation, a song from the 1930s, a time full of enthusiasm and belief in the nation's bright future.
Сразу догадался, потому что он побледнел. схватил плеть, ворвался в нашу колонну и начал всех избивать плетью.
He figured it out immediately, turned white, grabbed the whip, and started beating us. Frenzel laughed. Then he sent him away, telling us all to get back to work. On the battlefields across Europe, Africa, Asia, in the Pacific, millions of people were fighting the Nazis and their allies. Every day, thousands of lives were lost. 1943 saw a breakthrough. Nazi Germany was being defeated on all fronts. Politicians tried to agree on the future of the world. Meanwhile, in the Sobibor concentration camp, several hundred prisoners were dreaming about life. Each hour lived was a blessing. October 14.
И было решено так. Половина четвертого.
And it was decided this way.
Я вызвал всех.
At 3:30, I called together all those who were directly in charge of the groups responsible for the killing of the Nazis. Boris Cybulski was sent to Camp Number 2, where 4 SS officers were working. He was in charge of the people who were to kill the 4 Nazis there, and then come to help us kill the ones in Camp Number 1.
Начать уничтожение в нашем первом лагере. На 4 часа был вызван начальник первого лагеря.
At 4 o'clock, the head of Camp Number 1, Neumann, was called.
Александр Шубаев на четверть пятого.
Alexander Shubayev was sent there.
Тоже с одним товарищем.
At 4:15, Was Pepier was also sent there with one other guy.
Все они эсэсовцы
They were supposed to kill 2 SS officers in the dressing room.
перешивали на себя.
As a practice, the SS officers took all the dead prisoners' best clothes and altered them to wear them themselves or to send them to their relatives.
Они все аккуратно.
So they were invited to the tailor's dressing room to try on the garments, some at 4, some at 4:15. They all appeared at their appointed time. There you have German punctuality, and we decided to use it to our advantage. In the afternoon, Pechersky called me to talk. He asked, Syomka, could you kill a man with an axe? I answered, a human being, no, but an SS officer, with great pleasure.
Я взял Лернера себе в помощники. Там в курсе дела старший портной.
I took Lerner as an assistant, and the head tailor knew what was going on.
Офицеров, которые будут приходить.
His job was to distract the officer who came in to try something on, so that we could kill him using the axes. At the same time, we managed to cut off the security alarm system, the telephones, and the electricity. We took away the guards' weapons and collected all the bullets that were on hand.
Но немцы же ничего не подозревали. Я, значит, прошел мимо его.
The Germans didn't suspect a thing. I walked by one, lifted the axe over my head, and hit him. It happened that I didn't strike the first German very well. He even cried out. But at that moment, Lerner jumped in and hit him a second time, killing him.
Френцель, комендант первого лагеря.
Frenzel was the commander of Camp Number 1, and we knew that he was to arrive on the 14th at 4 o'clock. And he said that if the cabinets weren't ready, we'd all get 25 lashes.
Ну, думали, шкафы не будут готовы, нам нужно, чтобы ты только пришел.
заходит волжский немец. Он так нагнулся, а что это такое?
A German approaches, looks around, wondering what's happening. I struck him, and then Lerner struck him. And we killed the second one. It's not so easy to kill a man with an axe. We were a nervous wreck. It was tough.
Collected all the utensils, all the kind of stuff. So we were standing there. And she came with a knife, and I went with the other fellow. There was a younger fellow, Pechersky. He was there, three brothers and a father. It was him. And he was a very energetic, for my father, for my mother, for my brother, and for all the Jews you killed there. So that's the part that I took out. And then I was full of blood. I cut my wrist.
The head of the entire camp, Neumann, arrived at camp number 1 on horseback. When he arrived, he jumped from the horse, entered the room, took off his military jacket, put his pistol on the table, and turned to Cybulski, who was supposed to kill him. Then the head tailor, whose name I've unfortunately forgotten, came up to Neumann, turned him around as if to check how his jacket fit on him. Then he turned back. Shivoyev grabbed the axe and killed him. He screamed. At that time, I was in the next building, about 15 meters away, and watched through the window what was happening. I noticed that the horse reared up on its hind legs and neighed. And I thought, that's it, it's all over. But lucky for us, one of our younger guys appeared, took the horse by the bridle, and led it to the stable. A few minutes later, Shivayev runs to me, gives me the pistol, and says, Sasha, first weapon is yours. In the warehouse, they found a leather coat. They offered it to the SS officers. Do you want this?
He told me that he did go in, and he did put in the hand in the sleeves of the coat, and the moment he put it in, his hands were tied up like in a straitjacket, and he was killed with an axe. And he was thrown, a lot of clothing was thrown over him. As a matter of fact, the Nazis, when later they looked for the dead cameras, they were unable to find him.
So, 2 Germans in the tailors, 2 in the cobblers, a couple more were killed in the old carpentry room, and in the blacksmiths. Cybulski and his team killed 3 Germans. As far as I know, we killed 11 Germans. I asked one of the guys to call Luka, ask her to come to the carpentry room. Luka came running. I don't know what she was thinking, but she was beaming. I said, Luka, as I pulled the pistol out of my pocket to show it to her. Luka, you see, in an hour, we're all going to escape from this camp. We've killed some of the SS officers, and we can't stay here. Go, put on some men's clothes, and when you hear the whistle telling everyone to line up, make sure that you're close by me. She took off, and in 5 minutes came back carrying this shirt. And she says, Sasha, put this on. I told her, Luka, I'm already dressed. I'm prepared for this uprising. She said, no, put it on. This is my father's shirt. He always wore it when he was escaping from the Germans. If you wear it, you'll live. And if you live, we'll also live. There are no photos of Luka, and her fate is unknown. Sasha lined everybody up, and singing, we headed off in our direction.
With a trumpet, I entered the walk, The couples assembled it like every day, because the rule was it should look like every day. And the two couples which were in the organization were ordered even to beat us by us every day.
Печерский дал команду всем выходить.
Pechersky gave the signal for everyone to go out. He ran off to organize the others, and I lined up all the carpenters, and we went out. But no one was lining up. Everyone felt that something was about to happen.
We assembled in groups and we marched to the kitchen, to the main yard. It was 5 o'clock, and now I remember when I marched in, I was shocked to see how many people don't know what's happened. When we were six in that part of the camp, we were 500 in that time. If we were 500 people, I guarantee about 450 stand in the line for food, not knowing that practically 95% of the Germans are killed. But now one told another one, in simple, and they were kissing each other, and I remember older men, I say older, maybe his daughter was 17, maybe he was 50 years old. He was a tailor, and I remember walking back and forth and holding his hand and breaking his fingers, Why do we need it for? We could live another.
Но никто не думал, что мы выживем.
The most important thing for us was not to end up in that gas chamber.
And soon Sasha stepped on a table, had a speech, and I was standing about 5 feet from him. And again I was begging God, let me survive. And he said the last words. But they said,
if anyone survives, we must tell the whole world what's happening here. And everyone poured out, some of them onto the mined fields, another group to the officer's house, a third group to the central gates. There was heavy fire from machine guns, the watchtowers, automatic rifles. Frenzel shot at those who were running. About 400 people ran from the camp. 150 of them managed to escape death. On Victory Day, in May 1945, 53 former prisoners met. Those were the brutal mathematical calculations of freedom. In the history of the Second World War, this was the only concentration camp uprising in which the prisoners were successful. Himmler gave the order to eradicate Sobibor, so that this symbol of Aryan disgrace would be wiped out forever. Those who remained in the camp were executed. Then the camp was wiped off the face of the earth. Later, after the war ended, the ashes of the victims were collected on this hill. 250,000 Jews perished here. After the escape, Pechersky and several of the others managed to reach the border, cross the Bug River, and find other partisans. In 1944, he was again with the Soviet Army. As an officer who'd been a prisoner, by Soviet law, he had to prove his loyalty and was sent to the 15th Detachment. He was wounded and hospitalized, after which he returned home to Rostov. The letters he wrote from the hospital to his sister Zina became the makings of the book about the Sobibor uprising. He was invited as a witness to the Nuremberg trials, but did not receive permission from the authorities to travel abroad.
Это был интересный человек.
He was an interesting man,
Он прекрасно играл
played the piano
на
beautifully
фортепиано,
and composed music.
сочинял музыку и был просто
But I
хорошим
was young,
человеком.
and I didn't know that he was a
Не
hero.
знал, что он герой. Понимаете?
Only later, when I had the chance to read the book, Sobibor Uprising, did I understand who my uncle really was. After the war, Pechersky returned to his previous place of work at the Finance Economic Institute. Later, he found work closer to his beloved music as an administrator at the Theater of Musical Comedy.
В общем, жили всегда очень, так, скажем, по-моему, это был 50-й
We were always poor. I recall it was 1950 when a wave of Stalinist repressions against Jews began. We felt the Jewish question. And one fine day, people barged into our apartment to conduct a search. Later, we learned that Papa faced a similar search at work. But when they came to our place, first, they already knew that no one found anything at Papa's workplace. Plus, they saw our poverty. At that point, Papa's second wife, Olga Ivanovna, lived with us, along with her 7-year-old daughter. All of us, in a dark one-room apartment. Since Papa had been accused of a crime, he was excluded from the party. There was no trial, there was no discussion. They stopped the proceedings, but after being excluded from the party, he couldn't find work anywhere. For 3 years, he didn't work at all. As a distraction, he taught himself to embroider. He used all kinds of materials, old pieces of cloth, metal wire. He dyed the threads himself. After Stalin's death, when they started to rehabilitate those accused of crimes, he was called to the Communist Party headquarters and was offered the opportunity to request that he be reinstated into the party. Papa said, "I never wrote anything requesting that I be removed from the party, and I won't write anything asking to be reinstated. If you decide that it's important to reinstate me, do it. But I won't write anything after what I've lived through." 3 miserable years without work. Finally, after Stalin's death, Pechersky was given a factory job, where he worked until he was eligible to receive a pension. The world knew about the Sobibor uprising and its main hero. In 1988, the British made a television film. The role of Pechersky, the Russian soldier, was played by Rutger Hauer, who received for that role a Golden Globe Award. Pechersky was invited to the premiere in the United States, but again, he was not allowed to travel.
Товарищи, во время восстаний очень много
Comrades, during the uprising, many people died. Let's raise our glasses to those who gave their lives and laid for us the road to freedom. Let's have a moment of silence.
мы полет наших птиц, и в каждом пропеллере дышит спокойствие наших границ. Длины, чтоб сказку сделать былью, преодолеть пространство и простор. Нам разум дал стальные руки крылья, а вместо сердца пламенный мотор. Все выше и выше и выше, невидимый полет наших птиц. И каждом крыле дышит спокойствие наших границ.
The Mathematical Calculations of Freedom. Film director, Marutian. Camera, Durandon. Sound, Bruce.